will see Canberra live until 6 o'clock, and in this half hour, I'll be talking finance with Luke Smith from Envision Financial. Good afternoon.
How you doing, mate? Right?
So far, so good. What a week it's been, huh?
Oh, tell you what, they fly by.
They really do. Today we're taking a look at something that I know absolutely nothing about. It's called the PSS Pension. So what exactly is a PSS Pension and what makes it different to other super funds?
Yeah, so this is one of the government defined benefit schemes. So if we break down, if you've been an employee for the government for a number of years, you would have gone in as a CSS member, which was the original defined benefit scheme. And then they offered or converted people to the PSS, and then they closed that fund, and now you can be in the PSS AP, which is a standard accumulation fund. So today we're going to talk about the PSS and how it operates and some things to consider when thinking about how to take your benefits, because I find there's a lot of discussions around the water cooler about the best way to do it, and generally speaking you need to think about your own situation and not that or do what your peers have done, because everybody's in a different financial position. So we'll touch on some of the key things today that people can think about so that they can make an informed decision.
So it's a public service pension. Does it apply to anybody else or just people who worked for the Commonwealth?
Correct. Because you're not from the ACT, you wouldn't know that.
Not a clue.
No, sorry. So it's where you're employed by the government.
Mm-hmm.
You can maintain your membership for the duration of your employment. If you leave, your benefits are preserved within that fund and they're generally not rolled over to another super fund. So This fund is very, very different in relation to the way that it operates, the way that the benefits are calculated, the way that you can take your entitlements, and we're going to talk through some of the key things today just to sort of point out what people should consider whilst they are a member about how they can maximise their benefits and what to think about if they're going to take a pension, because there are a number of different ways that the benefits can be accessed, because it is extremely different to a standard accumulation fund. As I said earlier, this is a defined benefit scheme. So your entitlements are defined by a calculation which is set under the rules of the fund, and there are some key contributors to the way that you get your benefits withdrawn and how you can maximise the calculation of your benefits over your working life.
Well, you did warn me before we started that it is complicated, so how can we make it simple? Where's the best place to start?
All right, so the PSS is a defined benefit scheme, as we said. So it's effectively a lump sum scheme that has a pension option. And what I mean by that is when you are a contributing member to this fund, you direct some of your money into the fund on an after-tax basis. And your contribution is used to work out what they call an accrued benefit multiple. Okay, now when you retire, it's your final average salary of your last 3 years, multiplied by your accrued benefit multiple, gives you a number. Okay, so that's the first part of how the fund operates. So the important things to consider here are obviously get your final average salary as high as possible. That's a very good thing. The second thing is maximize your accrued benefit multiple. Now, somebody can do that by increasing the amount of money they direct to the fund up to the maximum of 10%. So I'll give you an example of how it works. If I make a 10% contribution to the PSS, my accrued benefit multiple is 0.31. Okay?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, take my word for it. If I make a 5% contribution to the fund, my accrued benefit multiple is 0.21.
Okay.
So basic rule of thumb here, higher the contribution, higher the accrued benefit multiple. And as we said earlier with the formula, without getting too technical, final average salary by accrued benefit multiple. So if you're going to be in there for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years and you're making a 10% contribution, the factor by which your wages are calculated is going to be as high as possible. So that's a very, very good thing. So highest final average salary, highest accrued benefit multiple creates a number. Now, this fund is very, very generous in the way that benefits can be calculated, and obviously it's one of the golden eggs that people hang on to over their working life and maybe don't change jobs for fear of losing their membership, which in certain situations is very, very valid. The second part of why this fund is very, very good is the pension conversion factor. So if we've worked out how much your membership is worth, now we apply the pension conversion factor to work out the value of your income stream.
Okay, so the first part works out a lump sum value
Yep.
of what the fund is worth at your retirement.
Spot on.
And so now we're talking about how we convert that value into a pension value if you choose to take a pension.
Exactly right. 100% correct. So first we need to maximise our benefits. We do that by increasing our final average salary and increasing our rate of contribution up to the maximum of 10%. Once we get to our number, we then have three key options in relation to how we can take the benefit. Obviously, you can convert that all to a full pension, where you take 100% of your lump sum value and divide it by the pension conversion factor for your age.
Right.
So for example, if you were 60 years of age, the pension conversion factor is 11, off the top of my head. Don't hold me to it. So if we think about that, we take $1 million, divide it by 11, and then that's our annual pension for the rest of our natural life.
Okay, even if it adds up to more than $1 million.
Oh, over your working life, quite possibly, the value, depending on your life expectancy, could be significantly more. And this is why it is a very, very generous fund, because if we think about how it works, they're effectively generating a rate of return of 11%.
Yes.
Guaranteed for the rest of our life, indexed twice a year.
Yes.
So it has huge value. And a lot of people jump to that, which is very good in some situations and not so good in others. But obviously you need to consider your broader resources in relation to how you take your benefit. The second option is to take half of that lump sum as a pension and half as cash.
Okay.
Or to roll it over into super. So the second part of the fund says you don't have to take everything as a pension. You can take 50% or more.
Okay.
So you might say, I'll have $500,000 converted to a pension, and I'll have $500,000 used so that I can fund holidays, buy cars, buy caravans, or do whatever else it is you want to do leading into or during retirement.
Yeah.
Then the third option is I'll take it all as cash.
Right.
Or I'll just start I'll roll it over to another super fund. You can pull it all out, or you can roll it over to another super fund, and then you're playing in the normal super world like everybody else.
Okay.
So they're the three key things: full pension, part pension, or lump sum. The biggest thing we see where people have not considered a broader strategy is when the paperwork comes from the fund, they give you those three examples. What they don't give you by default is anything between 50% of your pension and 100%.
Right.
So for example, let's say you didn't need a lump sum, or let's say you wanted to start an income stream, but you wanted to pay the balance of your mortgage off and buy a caravan.
Yes.
You might not take 100% of your benefit as a pension. You might take 80.
Right.
And have a little bit of lump sum to buy the things you want to buy.
Yeah.
So anywhere between 50% and 100% can be used to start an income stream. And I think that's something people need to keep in mind, because the automatic or generic paperwork that comes out of the fund just gives you
this or that.
100%, 50% or lump sum.
Right.
So understanding your pension options is very, very important. And understanding how your broader retirement is going to be funded is also very, very important, because everybody's situation is a little bit different, as I said earlier. So it's important that you do what's right for you, not what all the ladies or the guys did at work because they thought it was a good idea for them.
On 2CC, we're talking finance today with Luke Smith from Envision Financial, and we're talking about PSS pensions, and you are absolutely right, Luke, they are complicated. So we'll get some more details about the nuts and bolts of the different choices that are available after we come back from the break. And the three choices we've been identifying so far are take it all as a pension, take half as a pension and half as a lump sum, or the third option is to take the whole lot as a lump sum. And then of course if you do take a lump sum, you then got to decide what you're going to do with it, whether you're going to actually spend it or if you're going to put it into another form of super. But we'll engage with all of those details after the break. We'll see Canberra live until 6 o'clock, and in this half hour I'm joined by Luke Smith from Envision Financial, and today we're talking about a PSS pension, which of course is the Commonwealth Government pension. If you have been a public service employee, this is the fund that you've been with while you were employed by the government. Now, as we've covered in the first half of today's program, it is a little bit complicated, but we've identified three basic options at the time of retirement. You can take it as a pension, you can take it as a lump sum, or you can take it as a little bit of both.
Correct, that's exactly
How do we
right.
choose what's the best option?
Well, I think again, we need to think about your broader situation. So you need to consider what your spouse has in relation to superannuation, if that's appropriate. Obviously not everybody has a spouse, but if there's two of you, you need to think about, well, what do we need to take in relation to income, and how can we meet our objective of covering living costs with part pension, full pension, two full pensions, one lump sum, one pension, and a myriad of different options in relation to what you can take. Obviously debts, understanding, do we have any debts we'd like to extinguish? Have we got any large capital items coming up? That's where a part pension, part lump sum can be good, because it's a good way to realise some of that funding for capital items that you may not have the cash lying around to buy. Some other things to consider when jumping to the full pension is, are you going to continue working? So part of the pension over the age of 60 is still taxable. So this is where the fund differs slightly to normal accumulation funds, where anything you draw over the age of 60 is tax-free. The PSS is what they call an unfunded scheme, which means that the employer portion of the benefit that's contributed to the fund has never had 15% contributions tax paid on it. So where a standard employee, when a standard employee puts $10,000 into super, you pay 15% contributions tax and the balance is invested.
Yes.
Because this is a defined benefit scheme, there's no actual money sitting anywhere.
Okay, so the government wants their slice of the toast.
There you go. So to get that, what happens is the unfunded portion of a pension remains taxable.
Right.
And one of the benefits at age 60 is you get a 10% rebate on the taxable component. So that's something that most accountants will wrap up and take care of for you, but that rebate has a lot of power in relation to reducing your total tax position. But one thing to consider is obviously, are we going to continue working? And how long are we likely to do that? Because you could buy yourself a potential tax problem. That obviously there are strategies to address, but you need to think about your broader income needs.
Well, we talked last week about the options for people who would like to work after retirement or after they stop their main career, whichever way you like to put it, because it's not exactly retirement, is it?
No.
If you decide to do something else.
Yeah.
But obviously, with this different type of pension, there are more things to consider if that's what you want to do.
Correct. And the other thing people need to remember is, obviously you can't salary sacrifice into the PSS scheme. So for those that can save, think about using another fund to accumulate tax deductible contributions to build your retirement wealth going forwards, because the PSS doesn't allow you to receive, the fund can't receive salary sacrifice contributions, nor can the PSS offer a transition to retirement option because of the way that the benefits are calculated. Now that's unlike the CSS, because the CSS is a different structure. They can actually take advantage of transition to retirement rules, but the PSS does not offer that to existing members. So that's just something to think about if you're considering winding down your work hours. The other thing people can have a think about is, how is the pension going to be taxed, and how can I fund my lifestyle? Because if you've spent your entire life working on wages, you take your entire pension, you tie your benefit as a pension income stream, you could be back to living on wages.
Right.
So again, think about your broader resources in relation to what you have. It's not something that everybody needs to do the same. The other thing to consider as well is your estate planning. So if you don't have a spouse, on your passing, that pension stops.
Right.
And you've lost all of that accumulated value.
Yes.
Because it doesn't pass to anybody else through your estate. So if you're single and don't have a spouse, have a think about your broader estate planning needs. So have a think
about getting a spouse.
Well, have a think about getting a spouse for one, and two, have a think about the estate planning control that you may want to pass assets on. So a part pension, part lump sum option may be appropriate for you as well, because I say, on your passing, all of the pension income stops, and the government just turns that tap off and keeps all of that accumulated value.
Yeah.
It's not an estate planning tool. So I find people that are single, that is a key concern for them in relation to their estate planning, and also attaining the value of what they've built over their working life. People hate to see the government just get to keep that.
Yes.
For use of a better term.
Well, it's better off in your pocket than theirs.
Well, exactly. So, the part pension option is something that people can consider.
Yeah.
Strategy-wise, some things people can make sure that they maximise their entitlements. Obviously, make a 10% contribution as soon as you can. I would generally say make a 10% contribution before you salary sacrifice to another fund, okay, because of that pension conversion factor and the value of the income stream that you can access. Making a contribution up to the maximum of 10% is very, very advantageous over your working life. If you then still have surplus income for yourself or your spouse as a collective, then look to salary sacrifice, but make sure you don't exceed the $25,000 concession or contribution cap.
And that, to be clear, that is salary sacrifice into a different fund.
Correct.
Because you can't do it with this fund.
Exactly right. And what members also need to do is go onto the website and check what's recorded against their concessional contribution cap, which is the $25,000 maximum, because you can log on the website. It's really, really good. It's really, really easy to do. You go to where the iEstimator option is on the website, and about 2 or 3 lines underneath that iEstimator calculation, and don't worry, PSS members will understand what I'm talking about.
I'm just looking blank because that's the way I normally look. Don't be alarmed.
It records how much is recorded against that $25,000 cap each financial year, so that you can't exceed it.
All right.
So think about a salary sacrifice option. So think about also a withdrawal and recontribution strategy to a spouse's superannuation to try and limit the impact of the transfer balance cap. So one thing people need to remember here is $1.6 million is the most amount of money you can have in super and draw a tax-free income stream.
Right.
Now, if you're going to take a pension out of the PSS, the value of that income stream has a factor of 16 applied to it. And then that amount, whatever that generates, so for example, if I have a $100,000 pension, that's the equivalent of $1.6 million against my transfer balance cap.
Okay.
Which means that any other super I have, I cannot draw a tax-free income stream from, and I'll pay 15% tax for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Now, there are debits and credits and other technicalities there, but think about moving money into a spouse's name. If you're going to salary sacrifice as a PSS member and you marry well and there's a number of years between the two of you age-wise, think about super splitting over your benefits so that you can accumulate money in your spouse's name, especially if you expect to receive a fairly high pension that will use up a lot of your transfer balance cap. So there's things that people can do now that can actually help them significantly down the road when it comes to managing their tax, when it comes to drawing an income stream, and then obviously maximising the amount of tax-free capital they could get their hands on once they reach their preservation age and retire from the workforce.
Well, as you said at the beginning, it is complicated, but I think you've done a pretty good job of clearing up some of the more important points. Even I could understand most of what you were saying, so I think you've done a pretty good job. If people want more information, where do they go?
Yep, so again, 6260-4749. Give us a ring in the office, make a time, come in, sit down, throw around some strategies. It's important to understand how you're going to take your benefits before you take your benefits, because there may be some estimates you need run by the fund, so that you have some clarity in relation to the numbers. Obviously, we've got the podcast, The Strategy Stacker, Luke Talks Money on iTunes, and Envision Financial Canberra on YouTube, where we put in all of the key takeouts of today's discussion, so you can pause it, write it down, go away, look for what you need, and then come back and finish watching the show. And we'll see you next week.
We will certainly see you next week. Thanks very much, Luke.
Thanks, Luke.
Luke Smith from Envision Financial, and we will be back next week to talk finances once again on 2CC.